A grand juror in the Breonna Taylor case is now suggesting that the Kentucky Attorney General misrepresented to the public what the jurors were actually presented in the form of evidence, and also what the jurors were presented in the form of charges. So this juror is arguing that the Attorney General actually did not bring forth any type of manslaughter or murder charges, and only brought forth charges for wanton endangerment in regard to Hankison, the one cop who faced any charges, although it had absolutely nothing to do with the actual murder of Breonna Taylor. So the grand juror has requested in court that any and all recordings, transcripts, and reports of the grand jury relating to the case be released to the public. A move a former Kentucky prosecutor called totally surprising and tremendously uncommon. In addition to the release of recordings and transcripts, the juror, according to court documents obtained by CNN, also asked the court to make a binding declaration that the grand juror has the right to disclose information. It asked for details about the process and details about the proceedings, particularly the motion stated to avoid fears that Cameron, that's the Attorney General, would attempt to use the court's powers of contempt in order, in case of a public disclosure. So this juror really wants to speak out, but is worried that he or she will be punished criminally as a result of doing that. And one other thing, the office of the Louisville Mayor, Greg Fisher, Tuesday reiterated its intention to release as much as possible of the police department investigative file without jeopardizing any of the ongoing criminal investigations. And to be clear, the FBI is in fact also investigating the murder of Breonna Taylor. So I'm guessing that's what's being referred to there. And Cameron announced that he would comply with a judge's ruling ordering a recording of the grand jury presentation be added to the court's case file. Now, we don't know whether that's ever gonna be made public. We're waiting to see if that happens. But again, really the heart of this story is this accusation that the jurors were never even presented with a potential charge of manslaughter or murder, and simply the charges related to the wanton endangerment because of how Officer Hankison basically started shooting into the building from the parking lot, which of course was reckless.
So let me make important distinctions here. If the Attorney General didn't even try to get them on any charge related to Breonna Taylor, but only press wanton endangerment on shooting into the other apartments, that would be unbelievably egregious. But if it turns out he tried to get them on wanton endangerment on the Breonna Taylor shooting, I think that's perfectly legitimate. So the chance of getting a homicide or maybe even a manslaughter charge against cops when they were shot at is honestly very low. And so now Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot at them perfectly legitimately. He had a permit for the gun. They didn't announce themselves. He thought he was defending himself. But still, it would be hard to get a murder case convicted there, get a conviction on that, or even an indictment through a grand jury. So to me, that's not the most interesting part of the story. I think what I'm looking forward to finding out, because it looks like now we are going to find out, is that what evidence did he present? Did he leave out certain evidence? So because we've seen this happen over and over and over again. In the post game, we're probably gonna have another story for you when it happened in California, where the prosecutors basically, when they're trying to indict anybody else, they go crazy in the grand jury. They present overwhelming evidence, and they say you can indict a ham sandwich because it's so easy to get the grand jury to say yes, let's at least try the person. You have enough evidence to try the person. But whenever it's a cop, they completely reverse it and they act as a defense attorney, which is outrageous. Now, we don't know that the Attorney General in Kentucky did that, but soon we will. So if he left out key evidence that was damning of the police action, well, that's unacceptable. If he presented it in a way that's favorable to the defendants when his job is to prosecute them, well, then the good people of Kentucky should know that in the next election, and that would be outrageous. So we'll see, and Breonna Taylor's representatives and Ben Crump are worried that he did leave out evidence that would have implicated the police. So there's no way of knowing until we get the actual evidence.
And I also want to just give you some details on one other government agency that's doing an investigation into this. As I mentioned earlier, the FBI has announced that it's investigating the circumstances surrounding Taylor's death and said last week that work continued beyond the state charges announced. So that's a good sign. I mean, the state charges don't take into account that Breonna Taylor was murdered. So it's good that the FBI is going beyond that. The agency has previously said it's taking a fresh look at all the evidence and interviewing witnesses, as well as examining all the evidence. The one thing that I'm a little worried about is what we know following the shooting. As Vice had previously reported, there was some evidence in the form of pictures of the scene indicating that some of that evidence had been tampered with, or at least tampered with. And we also have some new video showing Hankison inside the unit following the murder of Breonna Taylor. And so having him in the building right afterwards, makes me worry a little bit as well. Was there evidence tampered with in that case? We'll see. But the FBI does say that it's investigating this story and they're considering charges that go beyond wanton endangerment.
This is like my 12th time giving credit to the FBI. They really have actually done a shockingly good job, even under the Trump administration, in foiling domestic terror plots and holding local authorities accountable. So in this case, they're saying, yeah, a lot of the authorities in Kentucky say that they're all correct, but we're gonna go take a second look because we're not as sure of that. And that's great, and that's exactly what should happen. Because remember, the local prosecutors work with the local cops all the time. They have deep relationships and they don't want to endanger those relationships, and oftentimes they're personal friends. So that's why you need the federal government to come in and go, no, we're gonna double check this to make sure that people's rights were not abused. So I really appreciate that the FBI is doing that in this case.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.